Hello and you're very welcome to another GAA podcast. I'm John Mann, and of course this podcast is sponsored by OrgaRegister.com and Atak.ie. Use our promo code GAA podcast to get 15% off on OrgaRegister.com and get the best skins, gloves, equipment on Atak.ie. Be attack minded. If you like what you're seeing, like subscribe to YouTube because the sport has been absolutely brilliant so far. We're back, baby. The league is back this weekend, and no better man meant to be joined tonight by Conor McKenna, Johnny Murtagh, and Aaron Maher from the GAA Fan TV. Johnny Murtagh from the Crosswick Lane Rangers Club, and general GAA fanatic Conor McKenna. So obviously 3 brand new men on board this year. So really looking forward to having the lads on board this year to help me out with the previews, reviews, and everything goes with it. So start with yourself, Conor. How are you keeping?
Good day, John. How are you?
All good, sir. All good. Johnny, how are you?
Good, John. Thanks very much. Yourself?
All good, sir. Last but not least, Aaron, how are you keeping?
Yeah, I'm doing good, John. Not doing too bad, as I was saying to you earlier, recovering a bit from Saturday. But I suppose after 2-3 days passing and after months of restrictions and all the rest, it's kind of it's a worthwhile hangover, put it that way.
And are you recovering from the O'Byrne Cup victory, Aaron, or is that?
yeah, celebrations out in the streets and parades and all the rest. First O'Byrne Cup in a while, actually, would you believe? So parade in the streets and all the rest, like.
Johnny, how's things with you? Obviously, are you back with Castlevania yet since I was talking to
you? Yeah, back just 2 weeks doing a light bit of training. You know yourself, bit of pre-season. Could not see the balls for a couple of months. So I thought Aaron was recovering from doing a training session the weekend. I didn't know he meant to be here, but
yeah, that's I suppose one or the other. Unfortunately, the other way for me.
Too committed. You're too committed. And Conor, how are you keeping? You've been keeping an eye on the GAA activity last one.
Yeah, getting to plenty of games anyway, and good to hopefully get back to more now in this weekend and the following weekends. The league is always good and inter-county championship. So yeah, hopefully we'll get on the road. And Aaron, yeah, could be like you, hopefully as well. If you might have a good few nights out as well to complement it,
Absolutely, that's absolutely. Well, we're really looking forward to the action this weekend, lads. God, it's great to have it back. And I think the soccer can hopefully take a seat for a couple of months, and we can put the full focus into the GAA National League Championship and everything goes with it. But we suppose we can get going, lads, if you don't mind. And we'll start from Division 4 up, Division 4 up to Division 1. So the first game we'll look at in the Division 4 is Carlow against London, Saturday night in Netwatch, Cullen Park at 7 p.m. So Aaron, that's one game to look forward to this weekend.
Yeah, definitely is. Yeah, I suppose for Carlow, it'll be interesting to see how they. Obviously, Paul Broderick's retired there, so it'd be interesting to see what new players they bring into the team. And I suppose for London as well, like their first competitive game since 2020. So great to have them obviously back in the National League. And I think Maher there is staying on as well as the manager. Like, so that's Michael Maher. Like, that's a huge commitment for him. Like, he could have easily walked away when all this COVID crack was going on with the fact that London haven't had any games. So the fact that he stayed on probably shows the level of commitment, and it's probably not spoken, enough of how commendable that really is for London GAA. So it'll be an interesting game, no doubt about it. But you'd probably fancy Carlow, with all due respect, just because it is the first competitive game for London in 2 years. And I think the most important thing for London will just be playing the 7 games, getting a full championship season out of it. I think that would be the main thing.
And what about yourself, Conor? That's London first game in over 2 years, so they'll be buzzing for that one.
Yeah, and I probably think London's status in the league was probably up for debate before Christmas there, as with the need for PCR testing coming in. It looked like it could be maybe a bit of a boundary for London playing in the league. So I think they'll probably be delighted that they're included in the league, and hopefully, I'd say for them and Michael Maher, the target is to get as many games under the belt this year, develop a bit. Obviously, the whole COVID situation, it's not easy on them themselves. In New York are probably the 2 teams that suffers the most over the past 2 seasons. But I think Carlow, our team, it's hard to know what to make of them. I think they seem to be going very, very bad in the O'Byrne Cup. Kildare wiped them off, and then they couldn't field against Westmeath with COVID issues, and so the preparation in that sense hasn't been going well from a Carlow perspective. I think Niall Carew is renowned as a decent coach. He did a good job in Sligo and in Waterford, but I do think that Carlow this year, it's a chance for them in Division 4 to get promoted, and it's absolutely must win this weekend. I think that chance goes out the door if they don't beat London, so it's an absolute must win game for Carlow, and I think they should take 2 points at home on Saturday night.
Super stuff, Conor. Super stuff. And in the next game on Sunday, you have Leitrim against Cavan. it's a must-win for Cavan to gain any chance of getting promotion this year. A good start would be essential. Andy Moran over Leitrim this year, so a mouth-watering game, 2 p.m. in Sean McDermott Park. Really looking forward to that one, Johnny.
Yeah, absolutely. Leitrim. Yeah, it's really it's gonna take a couple of games to see what's basically gonna come out there. I think they'll be well organised, well coached. They will bring a lot to the table. But I do think it'll take a few games before we see really the shape and progression in Leitrim. So it's hard to see whether they'll come out on top in that game. It's one I'll be looking at closely. But I do think it'll take them a couple of games, John, to get organised.
What about yourself, Aaron? As I said on your podcast, Cavan need a good start here.
Yeah, and I suppose on paper this is probably, even though it is Division 4, it probably is one of the toughest games maybe for Cavan, especially first day out, going away against a Leitrim side that, obviously, with Andy Moran coming in there, they're gonna be up for this game definitely, and they're probably gonna see this as a good opportunity, maybe playing Cavan first day out. And as you said, Emlyn Mulligan's back in there, which is obviously a huge player to come back in. We'll see if Ryan O'Rourke gets some game time as well, but I think with Cavan and with Mickey Graham, looking at how they treated pre-season and how, I suppose, brilliant they were against Tyrone and how serious they treated it as well, in terms of the likes of your McKiernan's playing and some of the other lads as well, like Raymond, Thomas Gallaghan. So he'd probably be looking at Cavan and thinking, it would be the perfect, game to start with 2 points to really set down a marker and really build from there, because like what we were saying before, I think they play Wexford after this, so if they were to drop points against Leitrim, they're then in a situation where they're playing catch-up. And I think for Cavan, the most important thing for them is just to start fast and at least seal a top 2 place with a game or two to spare. But as we've seen with Division 4 down the years, it's super competitive. Everyone tends to beat everyone. But I think for Cavan, they can't afford to give Leitrim the 2 points either. So they'll need to start fast and win this game.
Absolutely, Aaron. A good start essential in that one. And in the next game, you have Waterford against Tipperary in Fairfield at 2 p.m. So, Connor, like Cavan, Tipperary need a big start here.
Yeah, they do. And I'll just say one thing on Cavan just there before we go on. Just the two lads. There's two teams that are probably similar to Cavan. It's probably Westmeath in 2017 and Derry in 2019. Since both of those counties had done the drop from Division 1 to Division 4, and the challenge for Cavan is, I suppose, don't panic if they don't win the first game, because they're probably more similar to where Westmeath were in 2017, because Westmeath were in 2 Leinster finals in the previous 2 years, and Cavan had been in 2 Ulster finals and won one of them before dropping. So Westmeath that year, Carlo snatched a draw at them in the first game. So I think Leitrim away could be Cavan's toughest game in the division on paper, really. So I'd say Cavan, if they do win, I'd say their challenge has to be promotion, but they shouldn't panic too much if the disaster does happen on Sunday. But just going back to that game, Waterford and Tipperary. Waterford have new management, Niamh Fitzgerald, and Tipperary, I think David Power had stated last year getting promoted to Division 2 was integral to them, and they ended up doing the opposite. They got relegated. So really, the Quinlivan is a big loss. It's a very, very average Tip team. I think they will have too much for Waterford, but I think promotion is definitely not a formality for Tip this year at all. And looking at the way the underage has been, Tipperary longer term could be prepared to be a Division 4 team or bottom half Division 3. So I think Cavan probably are too good for Division 4. I don't think Tipperary are too good for Division 4. I do think that they'll have too much for Waterford, but I don't know will they get promoted this year.
Mm-hmm. What about yourself, Johnny? I know Tipperary's down tools with obviously not having Mickey Quinlivan about this year and other players, but they really need a win this Sunday.
Yeah, I would still fancy them. Funny, I would fancy Tipperary. Because they did have that experience of being up in the other group, in the stronger group. So I would actually fancy them, even though they're missing a few players. Quinlivan not there. I would still think they'd find something, and possibly you could see a couple of younger players coming through in Tipperary. They tend to be fast, fit, and they always come up with a few wee surprises. These few players you never heard of. I actually think they'd be good for the win the weekend, John. I really fancy Tipperary.
Wait and see, Johnny. We'll wait and see. And in the next game, no better man to ask this one. Wexford against Sligo in Chadwick's Park in Wexford Park. So 2 p.m, Johnny. So your former clubmate going to be taking the charge of Sligo once again this year. So he'll be looking for a good start there.
Yeah, Tony, look, Tony need a good start here. You can't really dress it up any other way for Tony Mack after last year. I don't know. It's not plain sailing for him. He has a lot of problems, I think, down there. I think commitment might be an issue now. I haven't been chatting to him, but from the offset, from the outside, I think that might be an issue with them. And hopefully, they can turn the corner a wee bit. Listen, a lot of pedigree down in Sligo. They are mad about the football. They've sort of just went off the rails a wee bit. So it's not going to be easy for them in the first few games. They're going to need to turn the corner. We're going to need to see something different from them, to be honest. And last year, it just wasn't near do, and that's been straight about it. It was a bit of a shit show, to be honest. So look at we will watch closely at it, and I wouldn't like to call it either way, but I know definitely Tony Mack, he would put in a lot of work into it. But them boys look like they're going to need a hell of a lot of work. So that's calling a spade on it.
What about yourself, Aaron? Big game for, I suppose both teams, because Wexford really will need to get some sort of momentum going up there, won't they?
Yeah, definitely. And especially after the way Wexford wrapped up last year as well. It was horrendous really in the first two games, and they lost to Waterford and Carlow, and especially losing to Waterford as well, which a lot of people probably would have fancied Wexford to win. But the way they finished the year was very positive. They got that win over Wicklow, who had their number the year previous, beating them twice in 2020, and even their performance against the Dubs as well was very commendable. So I think looking at them in Division 4, I think there is an opportunity for them to be up there, and I think you probably you wouldn't really look at there being much between Wexford and Sligo, but it's a massive opportunity for Wexford to start fast. And even seen with Shell Maliers in the All-Ireland Club Football Championship as well. There's plenty of good players in there as well, and plenty of experience knocking around with the likes of Ben Brosnan, and Owen Nolan looks like a very good player as well, Robbie Brooks. So yeah, I like the look of Wexford. They have a lot of good players there, but as me and you were chatting on my podcast before, it's one of them things with Wexford where they probably just need to, I suppose, find that consistency really and put 2, 3, 4 wins together, because they seem to be usually only 1 or 2 defeats away from a crisis, and that's the worry with Wexford. But yeah, it's a big game, and it'll be interesting to see if Pat Spillane Jr. is even playing for Sligo. The fact he's committed with Sligo. So yeah, it'll be definitely an interesting one to keep an eye on.
Love to hear Daddy's thoughts on that transfer. He hasn't come out publicly speaking about it yet, so we can try and get him on the podcast, lads. I don't know if any of you have Pat's plans. Maybe Connor, you might have his number. Who knows? Stored away somewhere. But looking forward to that game, Division 3, lads. And the first game of the weekend, you have Limerick against Longford in the TUS Gaelic grounds at 5 p.m. All buzz down in Longford. 2 Cavalmen go down to help down there, Connor. So that's not bad help you're getting.
No, but if you look at that match, I suppose there are 2 teams which, they're probably Limerick are probably a known quantity, and Longford are probably a bit of an unknown quantity. In the sense that Longford have a new manager in Billy O'Loughlin. I know Billy; he was playing for Lomans there in Mullingar very recently, and he's a good guy, very good guy. But he was a very interesting quote, I think, in the paper after the Dublin Longford match last week. He was saying how they're to paraphrase, they're 100% focused on the league and they're not too worried about the Leinster Championship at all. So that's probably the right way of thinking, since Longford are very unlikely to win the Leinster Championship or come close to winning it. I think Limerick, on the other hand, Billy Lee has done an excellent job. I remember the year he took over in 2018, he had a very controversial interview after Clare had beaten them in the Munster Championship, and I think they went out to Mayo in the qualifiers then and got badly beaten. But in 2019, things picked up for Limerick gradually. 2020, things picked up gradually. They were very unlucky not to get to a Munster final, and I suppose in hindsight, which they would have had a chance of winning, considering Tipperary won the corresponding final. And then in 2021 last year, they were unlucky not to be promoted. I think Offaly beat them narrowly before they lost to Derry fairly comfortably. But Limerick, I think there's definitely an upward trajectory, and I think this could be a year where Billy will certainly be targeting promotion. I think Division 3 this year is particularly weak. There's no outstanding team like there have been in other years. Cork were probably very good, too strong for it in 2019. Derry last year were too strong for it. So Armagh were probably too strong for it then in 2018. But I just think this year is a big chance for Limerick, and probably Longford. Every team in Division 3 hypothetically could be promoted this year. It's a very, very competitive division while the standard is not hectic. That's a very tough game. It'll be one of the tougher games to call this weekend. I think Limerick might just be further down in development and might just do enough to shade it, but it will be close, and I'd say it's definitely one to keep an eye on.
Johnny, you want to be yourself? That's a big game for both teams.
it's a massive game, and just like Conor said there, it's extremely hard to call. One thing about Limerick, the flag for me could be that, there's been a massive emphasis on Limerick hurling there the last few years, and I'd imagine there's a lot of resources going into the football now as well. So you could start seeing a wee bit of development there, a wee bit of a push there. I definitely know they're going to be a well-conditioned team, and I wouldn't think fitness would be a problem. So I do agree with Division 3. It's going to be, I wouldn't like to call it. You couldn't call who's going to win Division 3 from the off, and it's going to be very competitive. You probably will look to have a few teams that it's probably make or break for a couple of teams in there as to what exactly they're going to do. But I do think Limerick, with the resources and what's going on behind backs and stuff like that within the county, I do think they do have the potential to maybe push on and be contenders in that Division 3. There's a very couple of tight games I'm looking forward to checking in on. Both teams would have a lot of players that you wouldn't be that familiar with. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of the younger players coming up through the ranks and seeing what both teams has to offer. As regards, provincial after that, lads, it's not going to happen. So, you basically want to be looking to see what they can try and do in the league and try and progress a wee bit there, John.
Definitely, Johnny, definitely. And I'll ask you this one: Fermanagh against Antrim, Brewster Park, 7 p.m. And these teams are not. They know each other inside out. They played each other in Ulster about 7,000 times, Johnny. So they're definitely not strangers to each other.
Yeah, but look at that. I do think Antrim has progressed. They're definitely getting well coached, a wee bit organised. Did a good win again down in the McKenna Cup there. But it's going to be very, very tough for them to go to Brewster Park, I think, and get a win. It will be a tight game, but I would fancy Fermanagh, John. Fermanagh's a very hard team to break down.
Yeah,
they will be very organised. Defensively, they're very organised. Now, I don't know if either of these teams is going to be organised on kick-out strategies and putting on a high press. We could see Fermanagh maybe giving up a few kickouts and maybe resorting to behind the midfield line, and then they will attack and look to break you down and hit you on the rebound. So that would be kind of something you might see from Fermanagh, and I would be expecting Fermanagh to get over the line just about, John.
Absolutely, it'd be an interesting game. What about yourself, Aaron? A big game for Kieran Donnelly and Fermanagh this weekend, and of course then the McGinley.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose to back up what Johnny was saying there, from a neutral point of view watching anyways, Fermanagh always seems to be such a physically strong team and such a tough team to break down, even going back to the Rory Gallagher era, really. And you've seen what they did to yourselves, Cavan, obviously last year in that opening game in the league. I think a lot of people maybe had them to potentially be in a relegation battle last year, at least being one of them relegation playoffs. So they're one of them teams that always seems to surprise you. Even in Division 2 there, I remember a couple of years ago, they nearly got promoted to Division 1 under Gallagher as well. So, it was Sean Quigley in there, who, is probably one of the best sharpshooters in this division and potentially even in the country on his day. So, yeah, I think Fermanagh are probably just a little bit more maybe experienced in this division. They have the knack of winning these kind of games before. Whereas Antrim probably have a bit more of a younger team, Enda McGinley's probably trying to find his way still a bit there as well, and Paddy Cunningham stepping away. So it'd be an interesting one, but with Fermanagh being at home, especially at Brewster Park, they're just such a hard team to beat there. And you seen last year, they really do make the most out of their home form. So I think with Antrim, it's probably, this game's probably coming a bit too soon, and they'll probably be looking at their own home games as well. But yeah, I'd probably be backing Fermanagh on this one.
Moving on to Sunday, you have Louth against Laois in RD at 2 p.m. So, Conor, first game of the year for Mickey Hart's Louth and Billy Sheehan with Laois.
Yeah, well, this is another one. I suppose I think we're getting the ones that are probably harder to call, but
that's why I'm asking you.
Laois, I just saw odds today that for promotion, and Laois are favourites ahead of Westmeath. Now, probably speaking with a hint of bias, but Westmeath absolutely hockeyed them in important games in the league in 2020 and 2021. They won by 16 points last year in Leinster Championship. So if someone can explain that to me, that would be great. And like so, but Laois are a very, very, very,
you can.
very average team. I suppose just going back the last 2 years, Laois have been awful. Like they probably wanted to play in Division 4 standard football, and now I don't know what the big kind of hype around Laois is. Is it the O'Byrne Cup? Is it all of a sudden that? And if it is the O'Byrne Cup, then I suppose people should take into account Wexford beat them by about 15 points in the first round. So I don't know where this sudden real madness has gone for Laois. Like I thought they were awful the last couple of years, and like really and truly Louth under Harsh were very good last year. Mickey Hart, by all means, is a very good manager. I've heard good vibes coming from the Louth camp, and I think Louth could do a job this weekend on Laois. I think that Laois I just don't know how they could have improved that much from the last couple of years. Now, Billy Sheehan is a local, but he's not a local, sorry, I'll rephrase that. He's a Kerry man. He's a former Laois player. He's a very much an adopted Laois man at this stage, you know. But I believe they've got a bit of passion, a bit of organised setup this year. Now, I think that Laois, it's a big game for them at the weekend. They're playing Westmeath the week after. I think if they can beat Louth, and then they'll be under no fears against Westmeath. But I do think if Louth do manage to put one over Laois this weekend, Laois could be in for a very long Division 3 season, because Westmeath could come the next week and beat them as well, and then suddenly they're very much in a dogfight with a team that will be very low in confidence. So I'm going to go with Louth. I think I like the way Hart has Louth building at the moment, and I think Louth, he very much, I'd say, similar to Billy O'Loughlin, he'll be targeting the league very much as opposed to the Championship, and their absolute minimum aim will be staying in Division 3. If not, I'd say they'll have probably sight on promotion, and I'm going to just go with Louth to shade this one at the weekend.
Can you tell us what you really think of Laois there, Conor? And what about yourself, Johnny? Mickey Hart, we look for a win there?
Yeah, and do what, I agree 100% with Conor. You know, like I know that a wee bit of a run in O'Byrne Cup, but like, you know, I think it's time to get real. Laois is a myth, and the myth is in Laois and only Laois. Billy is a good fella. He's a guy who wears his heart on his sleeve, and it would give anything to the cause. But I wholeheartedly agree with Conor. I think I would fancy Louth. Mickey Hart is very organised. You can see what he was trying to do last year. A few things didn't work out for him, but they're getting very strong up through the middle. They're getting a good backbone there, and I think Louth will be I'd actually go as far to say as there could be 4 or 5 points in it to Louth, to be honest with you. I think Laois is going to struggle in that there. If they don't get a good start, they're going to come under serious pressure, and they're going to be actually one of the favourites to go down. Not to be promoted, to be honest with you. I don't know where that's coming from, but yeah, I would definitely agree with Conor on that one.
So again, the next game, Westmeath against Wicklow in Cusack Park at 2 p.m. So obviously, Aaron, you have relations up in Westmeath, so you'd be looking for a win for Westmeath there.
Yeah, well, I suppose, yeah. I mean, there's always been maybe a bit of an untold rivalry between Westmeath and Laois down the years, and maybe that's where that's coming from. But I suppose for Westmeath, yeah, like I think this surely has to be a given, really. Like especially with Avie Burke stepping away from Wicklow, and you know Wicklow done very well last year. To be fair to them, like staying in Division 3 and getting that win over Cavan, but I'd be amazed if Westmeath didn't get promoted. To be perfectly honest, like you're looking at like how well they even played last year, even in games other than that Laois game. Like first quarter against Cork was probably some of the best football I've seen all year. They were unbelievable that day. Like I remember Ray Kennellan nearly kicking a point over by the sideline. I thought he was unbelievable, and they nearly beat Mayo. They nearly beat Meath as well. Like they could have been in a promotion race. You know, it could have been themselves in Clare, and you know maybe Westmeath could have beat Clare and been in Division 1. So it's kind of crazy how it's all turned out. But like what we were saying with Cavan, you know, you need to start fast, and they need to get the points on the board. And you know, you're looking at John Heslin, top class footballer, and Ronan O'Toole looks like a good up and coming player as well. I think Luke Loughlin's back in there now as well. So yeah, there's pressure probably on Westmeath maybe to come back to Division 2. I don't know what Conor thinks, but like you know, especially with the fact that there probably isn't a huge amount of quality in this division. I think I'd be amazed really if Westmeath didn't get promoted, because they've definitely got the talent, and if they play anywhere near what they played like last year, they should beat Wicklow comfortably enough.
What about yourself, Conor? A big weekend for the Westmeath men.
Yeah, it's hard to know, Aaron, but you're saying is right there, 100%. Westmeath, they did play well last year, but they played well in patches, and they didn't like they've won 2 of their last 11 matches, and both of them have been against Laois by 10 points or more. So really, like Westmeath, they've lost 8 of their last 11 and drew 1 against Armagh in February 2020. Like, so they probably haven't got the results. The performances have been decent. I don't know if they've been getting too much praise for some of the performances. Like, I think that certainly the match against Cork last year, while they did play some decent football, they conceded 3-22, and Cork were probably slightly ahead the whole game. And I was very disappointed in particular with the game before that, which was against Down, because Down really weren't going well last year at all, and they'd come off 2 very heavy defeats against Mayo and Meath, and Westmeath lost to them then, and that was probably the match that probably ultimately contributed to Westmeath getting relegated to Division 3. And like, it's a tough, they've 4 away matches, which are hard. They have to go to Portlaoise to go into RD, and they're going to the Gaelic grounds, and they're going to Corrigan Park. So they're playing Laois, Louth, Limerick and Antrim away. Like, so they've 4 tough away matches, Westmeath. So it's absolutely essential that they beat Wicklow. I think Colin Kelly, the Wicklow manager, was over Westmeath in 2018 and it didn't really work out for him at all. But I think Wicklow, their last game was against Wexford, losing that. But I don't know where they that push for championship last year on the basis that they would have had to play Dublin had they beaten Wexford, and that was obviously going to be a very unrealistic chance of victory. So I think last year Wicklow, the game they really had to win was against Cavan, and they managed to perform results. And that Cavan team is as good, if not better, than this current Westmeath team. So I'd say Wicklow would certainly have no fears, and I think Wicklow will be disappointed if they lost this game. Now, I do expect Westmeath to win, but I certainly wouldn't say it's a formality, and I would give Wicklow some chance this weekend. But I do agree, I think it's absolutely essential that Westmeath get promoted this year. There'll be quality teams coming down from Division 2, and I expect a quality team to go up in Cavan, definitely. So I think next year Division 3 will be a lot tougher than it is this year, and I think Westmeath's team is certainly not getting any younger. So I think this is absolutely huge for Westmeath that they do manage to get promotion this year.
Definitely. And back into Division 2 on Saturday night, you have Derry against Down and Owenbeg at 5 p.m. So that's a mouth-watering game, Johnny. And obviously Down would be looking for a big year this year. James McCarthy's back managing them, and obviously we all know about Derry and the form they're in with Rory Gallagher. So that's a mouth-watering game, Johnny.
It's a big game, and we James and Aidan O'Rourke back in there with Down. Aidan to be very the defence, very well organised and stuff like that. You know, it's probably the toughest game for Down to go away to Derry. You know, missing them Kilcoo fellas, I just can't see it. I was very, very impressed with Derry last year, and I think they're really progressing and turning the corner. And I think they could be a dark horse team this year, Derry. I think, you know, again, it's like a couple of these teams that we talked about, the Sligos, the Westmeaths, the different teams like that. It's all going to depend on the first couple of games. But I would actually expect Derry to go up. They have a lot of talent in there. They have a lot of class. They have a good backbone, a good defence, you know, and they're starting to look very organised. Probably need a wee bit more organisation in the forward line. I think we might see that this year, but I would expect Derry to win, and I would expect them to win comfortably the weekend. I probably think they mightn't just have to get out of second or third gear now, to be honest.
Aaron, what about yourself? Rory Gallagher would be mad to get off to a good start, but on the flip side of that, James McCarthy would be looking for a win in that game too. Yeah,
definitely, and it's an interesting one with Down, because if Down were probably to play their best 15 players that were actually in the county, like I think they'd have a real chance at, you know, mid-table Division 2, possibly even pushing for Division 1. But like what Johnny was saying there, obviously a lot of those lads are away with Kilcoo at the minute, and it's hard to know if any of them will commit to the team further on down the line. Like Sheelan Johnston looks like a very good player maybe to come in there potentially in the future. Like, he looks very good at under 20 level the past couple of years. But yeah, like there's a lot of hype around Derry, and I suppose it will be interesting to see if they can live up to the expectation and live up to the hype. You know, they done very well last year in Division 3, and it's clear that they're definitely above the level of Division 3, how comfortably they came through there. So you'd be looking at them in Division 2, and there's definitely, it's a weird one, because I don't think there's necessarily pressure maybe to be promoted because they're only coming up from Division 3, but I do think at the same time there's probably a lot of people maybe outside the county that are looking at players like Conor Glass, and you've Emmett Bradley in there. Like that's a brilliant midfield pairing to have, like especially for Division 2, and maybe Shane McGuigan will come back in now as well, especially with the Slot Neil hurlers he was losing yesterday. So there's plenty of talent in there, plenty of players. Like they have a lot of options, and Rory Gallagher has done a great job in the National League down the years. So they're definitely moving in the right direction. It will just be interesting to see now how they get on against teams maybe that are closer to their own level that they haven't played yet, like the likes of Galway, Roscommon. It'll be interesting to see how they deal with those teams, because like they played Donegal last year, but that was really the only game we've actually seen them up against a Division 1 team because of COVID since 2019. So it will be very interesting to see how they get on against teams that are more or less at their same level.
Definitely on Sunday. In round 1, you've Clare against Offaly in Cusack Park, Ennis at 2 p.m. So, Conor, Tomás O'Shea, Shane Lowry will be looking for a win in that game.
Yeah, you're giving me the hard games to call again, John. Here, I think, but no,
you're new. That's why.
This is probably going to be, I'd say, it could be the game of the weekend. Really, in terms of it's probably the most important game of all the games, because it's really one of those must-win games for both teams if they're going to stay in Division 2. Do you know, like really, I'd say on paper it looks like a three-way battle to go down between Clare, Offaly, and Down, and only one team can survive. So I think Colin Collins has done an excellent job in Clare since taking over in 2014. I think he's probably been up there with the best manager in Ireland at that time.
Longest serving manager as well. Yeah.
Longest serving manager, yeah. And I think John Maughan has actually done an excellent job in Offaly as well, for that matter. So they're both sides which have probably taken counties from the basement division in Colin Collins' case and Division 3, the probably worst team in Division 3 in John Maughan's case, to being up there with promotions. So it's hard to know how this is going to go. I think Clare probably are further down the line in terms of their development in Offaly, but it's a very young Offaly team. They're fearless, and I think that if Offaly do win this game, I think Clare will be relegated, definitely. I think Clare need to win this game to survive. I do think if Clare do win the game, I think Offaly, it's a young team full of confidence. They could take a few more scalps, but they'll be tricky, because I think off the top of my head they have to go to Newry to play Down, and I think Clare have to travel to Newry as well in the last round to play Down. So Down will target both of those games to win. So this is a very, very mouth-watering game on paper, really. Gary Brennan not there for Clare. I think Clare's missing a few lads. A young Offaly team, they might just steal this one Offaly at the weekend, and I think Offaly could cause a few shocks across Division 2 this year.
Johnny, it would be awfully good if Offaly going to win this weekend.
Yeah, well, it would be awfully good, yeah, and awfully start. But yeah, like Shane Lowry, absolutely, he might drink a couple of pints of stout if they get a win the weekend. But yeah, he's a man who's putting a few pound in there, and he's a big supporter of Offaly. And like we did say off air, there is a lot of stuff going on in Offaly, and there's big pushes going on at development and stuff. And I think they could. I think they could get the win the weekend, to be honest with you, John. I think Offaly could be well worth the win. Again, there's someone you wouldn't know an awful lot about as what they have coming through the ranks. Well, I wouldn't anyway. Maybe some of the other pair of boys might, but I wouldn't know what they have coming through the ranks. But I do know there's a big push going in the development, and I do think that could be the turning point for Offaly. And look at it again. It's another one of them teams. It's a tough call. As Conor says, it's a very tough call, but it's another one of them teams that's make or break in the first couple of games to see where they're at. But I do think Offaly could maybe just shadow it and get over the line the weekend.
Absolutely. Galway against Meath, Aaron. That's not a bad way to start the weekend. Pierce Stadium, 2 p.m. So that's another hard game to call. Yeah,
this will be very interesting, all right, because it'll be interesting to see with Meath, obviously, with the whole Andy McEntee situation last year. Is he going to stay or is he going to go? And in the end, he stays, and didn't go particularly well in pre-season, but at the same time, it's one of them where it's hard to know really until we actually see them play in the league. And it's a tough game first out. Like, I think they actually play Galway and Roscommon in their opening 2 games. They actually have Galway, Roscommon and Derry in their opening 4 matches. So there's a lot of pressure for me there quite early on. Like, they could have a tough start and they could potentially be down near in a bit of a relegation fight if they don't pick up a couple of points there. So it will be interesting, all right. And, they've brought through some good players in the last couple of years, like Cathal Hickey and Matthew Costello. Jordan Morris looks like a very good player as well. And this will be a tough one, though, because I think Galway, they've only beaten one team since the pandemic, and that was Roscommon. They beat them twice. So I think they'll really want to lay down a marker really and maybe take some of the pressure off Pádraig Joyce, because there probably was some people wondering, is he the right man after last year? And I think you only have to look at the way they played pre the pandemic to know how good they are and some of the talent that they have, and plenty of under 20 players coming through as well. So like I think Galway might slip up once or twice in the league, but I think they'd have enough here for Meath to win this game. I think with players coming through like Matthew Tierney, who looks like a very good player as well, like the fact he's vice captain already, like probably speaks volumes of what Pádraig Joyce thinks of him. So yeah, I'd be fancying Galway to get this one, but Meath as well is interesting, because it will be interesting to see if they can kick on a little bit more, because I think a lot of Meath fans have been excited with the young players coming through, and I think the game against Dublin and Croke Park was really the first time that they really felt like, okay, we might actually have a chance here. Maybe these players are going to be good enough to beat someone like a Dublin, or at least be competitive. So it'd be interesting to see now if they can make that step up and be this sort of team that a lot of Meath fans are hoping they can become.
What about yourself, Johnny? Can this year's Leinster Championship final runners-up beat Galway?
See, to be brutally honest with these two teams, lads, they're two teams that frustrate the life out of me. To be brutally honest, because there's such a mixed bag of tricks all the time, and you don't know what you're going to get with either of them. Meath frustrate me because Meath is such a big pick, and then they haven't been fit to get it organised in Meath for an awful long time. You see flash in the pan, and another time you'll see what Meath's capable of in glimpses for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then next thing they disappear. Or they might string a couple of wins together. Very, very frustrating team. They're well coached. They're extremely well coached. I have a lot of time for Andy McEntee. You know, I was surprised he stayed on. But back to that other point there about Pádraig Joyce and calling your man in and making him captain. You know, I think that speaks volumes to me. I wouldn't actually go as far to say is the fact that he thinks highly of him. I would actually go as far to say is the fact that maybe Galway is missing leaders within the pack, and Joyce probably feels that he has to go outside of that and try something different with an up and coming star coming through the thing. So I think Galway is going to need to show leadership. I do agree that Galway will probably win the game, but they're going to have to show us a hell of a lot more. That, you know, they do have the capability in Galway. They just need to get their act together. And I'm not sure if it's Pádraig. Like I would have an awful lot of time for Pádraig as a footballer. It's amazing. And I don't think there'd be anything wrong with his coaching style or anything like that. I think they probably could do with a good toe in the hole down there and get boys on side, to be brutally honest with you. But very frustrating. Definitely very frustrating, both teams.
Toe in the hole. Johnny Murtagh calls out the Galway couplers. I could see it in the Independent tomorrow morning, Johnny.
Yeah. Worry about the Independent.
And moving on to Roscommon against Cork in Dr. Hyde Park at 2 p.m. on Sunday, Connor. That's another game to look forward to, and two teams that really need to, as Johnny says, big kick up the hole.
Yeah, well, I think this game probably exposes the flaws in the club structure, really, because Roscommon are going to be without half a team because of the way their club is doing well. Like, because St. Fonia's are playing Trim on Saturday and Pádraig Pierces are playing Chemical Crokes on Saturday as well. So Roscommon are actually, like, the two Murtaghs and a whole heap of Pádraig Pierce lads. That's the spine of the Roscommon team is gone for that game. Now, I suppose it's probably works both ways because Ian Maguire is probably Cork's best player is missing with St. Finbarrs. So this game is one of those ones where while the league is absolutely vital for both teams, it's very hard to gauge what sense Roscommon in particular what level they're going to be at after this weekend, you know, because they've half a team to come back. And I suppose their woes will be further compounded if Fonia's and Pierces win, either of them, or particularly if both of them win. So, and I do think, like, when Derry were relegated to Division 4, Slot Neil won Ulster virtually all of those years, you know. So while talk was of Derry were in crisis, it was more that just the best players weren't available. And Slot Neil losing yesterday will put back Shane McGuigan, put back Chrissy McKagan, put back Brendan Rodgers in the Derry team next weekend. So I'd say James McCartan was absolutely roaring for Slot Neil yesterday to win, like, you know, that kind of way. But it was just that is a flaw in the club structure, but now it is probably being rectified. But I do think that this weekend, Cork are dark horses. Ricken is a good coach. They have decent underage. They've always had good players, and I think going to Roscommon, I think Cork could win that game this weekend, and I expect them to just come out on top on Sunday in Dr. Hyde Park.
What about yourself, Aaron, as well? Because Cork are down four very essential players. I think GAA stats were put up earlier on. So 4 big losses, and as Conor was making a good point there, they're down men through the club scene still going on. So that'd be an interesting game this weekend, Aaron.
Yeah, like it is interesting, all right, with Cork, because I watched that game against Kerry, like, and it was kind of more of the same stuff from Cork, really, that we've seen over the years. It was similar enough to the Munster final last year. Now, the only difference really is Cork didn't have their best team out, obviously, and I think for Keith Ricken, there is a lot of options in Cork, and there are a lot of players there, like, and we've seen some under-20 success, obviously, in recent years, and we've seen a lot of good young players coming through, like Blake Murphy and Mark Cronin, and I think for Keith Ricken, it'll just be about finding the balance and finding the right players. It might take him a bit of time to maybe find his best starting 15, and like for Roscommon, they do have a good crop of under-20 players there coming through, like obviously from last year, from making the final, so you might see some of them players maybe involved in that game versus Cork, like, and it will be interesting, all right, because Roscommon have kind of chopped and changed their backroom team quite a lot over the last couple of years. Like obviously Poacher's not there anymore, so like there is pressure on Andy Cunningham, I think, because they're making a lot of changes to the backroom team and all the rest, and I think they're reluctant really to make any changes to Cunningham because of what he done in Connacht. Obviously, like, it's not, Roscommon haven't won that many Connacht titles in their history in senior football, so obviously that was a huge achievement when he done that. So it is an important game. Like, I don't really think there's much pressure on Cork necessarily to get promoted. I do think there will be pressure on them not to get relegated and not to finish anywhere down near the bottom two. But I think they have enough quality to avoid relegation anyway. So there's definitely pressure on Keith Ricken or on pressure on Roscommon going into this game, I think, a little bit. So it's definitely going to be an interesting one, all right. And it's a very hard one to call because both teams are missing a lot of players.
Definitely. Moving on to Division 1, you've Dublin against Armagh, Saturday night at Croke Park at 7 p.m, and the game is going to be live for television on Atak.ie. So, great way to start the Division 1 campaign, and Johnny, that's a mouth-watering game in prospect.
Yeah, look at it. It's a handy game to start off for Armagh, going to Dublin. Going to play the Dubs at Croker.
But look, you might talk out, Johnny, you might talk out.
Look, you to be honest, as any of the Armagh guys, they're going to love it. There's no doubt about it. They're going to be up for it. They're going to be raring to go. It's going to give them a chance to get out in Croker as well. So listen, they're going to be in their element this week, and they're looking forward to it. I've been reasonably impressed with Armagh. Like we said off air, probably. I felt from the Monaghan game, I know people can say, look at their pre-season tournaments and blah, 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 but Armagh hasn't won the McKenna Cup in a long time. It would be nice to get into the final, just even to get, maybe the game, maybe it was coming a bit close to the Dublin game, but still I would have preferred to see us in the final. And I think one of the things that I noticed with Armagh again Monaghan was that we give up the kick out too early. We should have went after the game and pressed them a bit more, as we've seen with Glenn done on Rory Baggin. Whenever they pressed that kick out, they had a lot of fortune out of it. So I think I definitely think Armagh took the foot off the gas, tried to hold on to the lead. And it's probably a dangerous enough game on Croke Park. But like, Desi Farrell's going to need a win. He's going to need a few wins to stop the rot. To even that old hangover of what they had last year, just to say that the Dubs is back. And I think for Armagh, what I would like to see from Armagh the weekend on Saturday night is to go after the kick out, put the high press on. Probably a 4-4-3 press, put it on tight and see what Dublin come up with and try and break them down. I was very, very impressed with Armagh's conditioning and physicality that they brought to the table in them couple of games. And definitely against Tyrone, albeit Tyrone was only back from holidays. And for most of the players. But Armagh looked very well conditioned, and they're going to have to use it the weekend, not overstep the line, but they're going to have to get physical with the Dubs, and they're going to have to say, right, we're in Division 1 here, we want to stay here, we belong here. And believe it or not, Armagh is a team that I can see winning Ulster this year. But we're really going to know where they're at when they're playing the Dubs now on Saturday night, and I absolutely cannot wait for it. I'm looking forward to it.
After Johnny, so a question to ask you, Johnny, like, is probably was talking to you a few weeks ago, but like, is the time now for this Armagh team, because like the plans are in place, Ciara Donny's there, Ciara McKeever's there, Geezer's there, so is the time now for these gentlemen?
I think it is. I think, you know, they put in a savage amount of work. The big thing for Armagh last year was staying in Division 1. They've done that. You know, they got a monkey off the back as well. You know, they managed to win games in Ulster as well, in the Ulster Championship. You know, these wee things, it's small stepping stones for Armagh, and players are starting to come of age. Like, don't forget, a lot of Armagh players were very young. You know, they've a couple of players back. Ross McQuillan's back there from Australia. Aidan Nugent, the joint captain, is back after the cruciate. You know, he's a top class player. There's a lot of people in Ireland wouldn't even know who this guy is, but I can tell you from club football, this guy's a serious finisher. You know, you don't even have to mention the Rains and these guys up there with Rains up there with the best in Ireland. You know, so you know, even I was very pleased to see Ugg Burns. Charlie Ugg was playing savage football. Probably went off the boil a wee bit last year. I want to see a lot more of him this year. I want to see him pushing on. I think around the engine room we might have one or two issues, and it was a wee bit of mix and match. I felt we got overrun again, Monaghan in the championship. But it is, yes, you're dead right, John. It's do or die sort of thing, and I do think now is the time for Armagh. I do think they can push on. And look at at the minute there seems to be something going on in Donegal. That's going to be a big game in the championship, the first round. And I would fancy Armagh at the minute. The way they're progressing, the young guys is coming of age on the conditioning. So yeah, I believe they're bang there, and I believe they're ready. I believe McKeever has done great work in defence, even though Geezer's that's his game inside out. But I think Donaghy has really brought something to the table last year. The forward line looked more organised. Armagh's very organised on their kick out. If they have the number one goalkeeper back, hopefully he'll be back. You know, so yes, I think now's the time for them, and I don't think they'll be far away.
What about yourself, Aaron? Dessie Farrell, a good chance to blow off the cobwebs from last August. So it's a big game for all involved this Saturday night in Croke Park, Aaron.
Yeah, it's a huge game, and for Dublin, like, there'll be a lot of pressure on them to win this game, and I suppose answer a lot of the critics maybe that was labelled at them last year when they lost to Mayo. And like, interesting enough, like, looking at Dublin's fixture list, like, this game's probably even more important given the fact that next week Dublin go away to Kerry and then home to Mayo. So like, if Dublin were to slip up against Armagh and then they were to get turned over by Kerry and potentially then turned over by Mayo, all of a sudden you're talking about Dublin in a relegation battle. So there's a lot of pressure, I think, for Dublin really to set the standard and go out and beat Armagh. And looking at them in pre-season, like, I think they were one of the most rotated squads in pre-season. Like, they changed their team up quite a lot. They gave a lot of game time to under 20 players. And it was impressive enough because even when you were looking at a lot of the score lines and when you were looking at a lot of the games, they were very similar in many ways to looking at Leinster Championship scorelines. So I was impressive enough with how they dealt with pre-season, but it is a big game, and I think as well, like, there will be a bit of pressure on Dessie to pick up the 2 points here, because, like as Johnny was saying there, like, Armagh are a very good team, and you know, if you give them a chance, if you give Rian O'Neill a bit of space, especially in Croke Park, I think it's the first time he's playing in Croke Park as well, from what I've heard. So I mean, that's like, those Armagh lads are going to be bang up for this, and if Dublin aren't up for it, they could be in trouble. So a lot of pressure there, and I think for players like Con O'Callaghan, Brian Fenton, Cormac Costello, Paddy Small as well, like, I think they'll want to step it up as well, because even Con O'Callaghan at times last year, he looked a little bit flat in some of the games. He looked brilliant in the first half of matches, but he seemed to fade quite a bit in the second half. So I think there will be a bit of pressure on some of those lads. But look, this Dublin team know how to handle pressure than any of us. So I would expect them to win the game, but I do think Armagh will make it tough.
And Johnny, I've seen a tweet earlier on. Will Armagh need directions to Croke Park on Saturday?
No. They definitely wouldn't need directions in Dublin. There's enough of them working in it, but they definitely. Hey, maybe they're going to concerts in Croke Park or going to get a COVID test. They have no problem getting to it, but yeah, look, it's probably one of the things I did forget to say as well about Dublin, that we were saying actually before, not today, but me and John was speaking a bit before. Is Dublin going to be more ruthless? Are they going to get back into the areas of their scoring zones and not shooting outside it, getting back into that around the D, what they're very good at? That's what I'm looking forward to seeing. Are they going to be disciplined? Are they going to stick to the game plan? These are the wee things that is for when you're looking from the outside in. If the hangover's over from last year, is players going to do their own thing? Or are they going to get back into the game plan the way the Dubs, what have been working for Dublin? These are the few wee things that I'm going to be keeping my eye out for on Saturday night. And that's the real questions. It's not really the winning and losing of the game, but it's more so for down the line that I think are where you're going to see your contenders coming out of. So that's a point I forgot to make on the Dubs just for Saturday night.
Super stuff, Johnny. On Sunday, you've Kildare against Kerry in St. Connell's Park at 1:45 on TJ Carr, Connor, and Jack O'Connor going back up to Kildare, so we might get a nice reception up there.
Sorry, John, I just lost you there. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, yeah. All good. Yeah.
What were you asking there, John? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, just on Sunday, you've Kildare against Kerry up in St. Connell's Park at 1:45, and I was just saying Jack O'Connor's going to get a nice reception from the Kildare fans.
Yeah, well, I think that it was very, very left a bad impression what the way the Kildare fans felt that Jack O'Connor went about the process of trying to be Kerry manager. But I suppose that's probably in the past now. I do think Kildare actually has a better management team in place now. This year, I think they have an excellent management team in place, and it's what the public in Kildare actually want, which is to generate a bit of interest in them. I do think, however, that Sunday could be a bit of I'm not going to say a reality check, but I do think Kerry will win that game with a good bit to spare. I think Kerry are excellent. I think they're very, very similar to what the Dublin team were a few years ago in the sense that they're ruthless in the league. And I think if there was a league format, if it was a Premiership style format the last couple of years, Kerry would have probably 3 successive All-Irelands, which obviously is very, very much hearsay. But I'd kind of compare them a bit to Man City in soccer, in the sense they're very, very good consistently, but they just don't seem to be able to do it maybe a bit similar to Man City in the Champions League. They just seem to be beatable in those once-off big knockout games, But I think this is the job for Jack O'Connor, is to change that. He has history winning All-Irelands. He's got an excellent track record. I think every year Tyrone have been All-Ireland champions. Jack O'Connor has won an All-Ireland with Kerry the following year in 2004, 2006 and in 2009. So he has a record at Tyrone and Tyrone as well. So I do think this is huge for Kerry, and I expect him to win on Sunday with a bit to spare.
And what about yourself, Aaron? Jack O'Connor would be looking for a good start this Sunday.
Yeah, like I can just imagine the Kildare groundsman maybe wanting to lock Jack O'Connor in like a full time or something like that. But no, I think it's a huge game, and I think it's a game that I think Kildare will be fired up for, and especially for Johnny Doyle and Glenn Ryan and the team that they've put together there, because I think they want to. Yeah, I think they'll want to prove as well that we're the right men in place. Like, we're not just in charge because you left. Like, we're going to do better here, and we're going to do good here. And it's a tough one for Kildare. Like, I think with the division that they're in, it's hard to see where they're going to pick up points. In all honesty, like, it's going to be very tough for them, and that's not a slight on them. I just think there's just so much great teams in this division, and it's going to be very tough for them. But I suppose for Kerry, like what Connor was saying there, like, I mean, They seem to always do very well in the league. Like, they seem to really excel in the league, and probably because they have such a great panel of forwards as well. Like, they can really rotate their forwards probably more than any team, and not lose that much quality. Like, if you've seen even against Cork, like David Clifford wasn't even playing, and they still kept up the same standards. And even you think back to last year in the Munster final, like David Clifford didn't even score from play, and they still steamrolled Cork. And like, even Paul Gainey there scoring 1-4 against Cork at the weekend, you nearly forgot about Paul Gainey and the talent that he is and the player that he is, and he probably hasn't 2020 was a tough one. It was a one-off game and it was in tough conditions, so you can't really, fault them too much for that. But we probably haven't seen them really at sort of all-star form in quite a while. So, like, they have a lot of talent. Stephen O'Brien as well, I remember, was giving us Dublin fans nightmares in that 2019 game. So, they've so much quality. And I think for Jack O'Connor, I think the main thing for him really would just be finding that sort of those 6 forwards, like your full forward line, your half forward line, and kind of sticking with that same 6 going into the championship, because I do think they have the players there and the options to come off the bench. So, and in terms of this game, like they should beat Kildare, but I think Kildare will be super fired up for it. I really do. Like, and I think the Kildare fans as well will want to, get one over on Jack O'Connor as well, and it'd probably make them as happy as anyone really to see Jacko leaving Kildare with nothing,
100%, Aaron, 100%. The game we'll all be keeping an eye on in the next game. You've Mayo against Donegal in Mark Fitzpark at 1:45. So, Johnny, that's a huge game for both teams.
It is. Yeah. Can I just go back to the Kerry one there a second, please, John?
Yeah, go on.
Just a small point I want to make to the lads, and it's something that isn't really been talked about. Jack O'Connor's a legend and he's back in there, and you can't blame, Jack, when the opportunity come up to go back in, especially Kerry in dire straits there at the minute as regards All Irelands. But there's something that not too many people's talking about, and it's very, very important. Paddy Tally is down there. That's going to make a huge difference. It's a monumental difference down there in the defence, the organisation, and what he's going to bring to the table. Another very, very important kick back there as well is Pat the Bag O'Sullivan is now in as a Kerry chairman. And that, I can tell you, boys, that is the man for the operation. There'll be no stone left unturned in Kerry. And anything them boys need is going to be through straight at them from the off. There's going to be nothing, even out of his club as well. An up-and-coming player that's been kicking points for fun in Kerry Championship is Tony Brosnan. This is a player a lot of guys might know about. This man is the real deal. So he's another one. Even though they have a lot of Arsenal down there, they have a lot of firepower. He's another man to have coming into the fray. He's getting his chance this year. So there's them few wee points, but I think that the Paddy Tally one's going to be massive, John, for Kerry, and that's what's going to make them, in my eyes. That's going to make them number one, and I think they are going to be the team to beat this year. The Dubs, the Dubs and them is going to go hammer and tongs at it, I suspect, later on in the summer, and I cannot wait for the fireworks.
Definitely, Johnny, definitely. Yeah. What would be your take on the Mayo Donegal game on Sunday as well?
Mayo and Donegal, I'd fancy Mayo. Donegal, watching that McKenna Cup game again, like I said, it's a pre-season competition. No, nothing big there, but they just didn't look organised enough for me. They seem to be trying out a few strategies on the kick out. They're trying to bunch and split from the middle, maybe trying to free up a couple from the back. They just didn't. They seemed okay to get out to the middle third, and then they didn't really have any organisation until Murphy and these guys come onto the field then for the second half. We spoke about this before. Can they keep Murphy injury free this year? It's going to be massive for Donegal, because if his leadership isn't there, Donegal seem to struggle. They seem to struggle. You nearly need 2 Michael Murphys. You nearly need him in the full forward line, and you need him in midfield. We all know what Paddy McBrearty brings to the table. He is class, but they're going to need more help. They're going to need more firepower, and they're going to need a couple of guys to step up to the plate. There was different guys coming in, young fellas coming through the last few years, and you would have said Donegal's going to kick on. Haven't done that. Now, whatever happened last year, COVID year, different things, but I would fancy Mayo. Mayo was going to get a lot of kickback from last year. They were very unlucky, so look at, I don't know. I think Mayo will be far too strong. I think Mayo is going to have a bit of strength and depth. They're going to have a load of, like Mayo always do. They have new guys coming. Mayo County operation is massive. They love it down there. They love the football. I'd be expecting a Mayo win this weekend, and they kick on the form from last year. They finished great. So listen, I think Mayo is good for the win this weekend. I go against my Ulster team anyway.
Super stuff, Johnny. And what about yourself, Conor? That's a big game this weekend.
Yeah, but I think there's probably a bit of a cliche that we learned nothing from the pre-season competition. But I think McKenna Cup final, we literally did learn nothing. The only things we already knew, that Donegal are incredibly reliant on Michael Murphy, and that Monaghan, they can't hold on to a lead. Like, I don't know what Monaghan were doing sitting back parking the bus, because it's cost them so many times. And just even going back to the last 2 years, there was that horrendous conditions against Dublin when I think they were 11 points up in the league match. It was a draw. They played Cavan and Ulster. They were 6 points up and cruising, and Cavan beat them with the last minute point. I think there was a few games last year against Donegal in the league was the same scenario where they were home and hosing.
Galway as well.
Galway, yeah. But they just Monaghan really and truly, I don't know what they were playing at there, but Donegal, when Murphy comes on, when Murphy's flying, they're a very good team. They're probably capable of beating any team on their day. I was at the match last year in Enniskillen. They had Tyrone beaten. They were playing them off the park in the first half, and Murphy missed the penalty. If the penalty went in, they were 3 points up with an extra man and probably going to push on and win comfortably. Then Murphy missed the penalty and got sent off, and Tyrone's the extra man, and Tyrone won that game relatively comfortably. So I think Donegal, look, it's a big game. They're definitely capable of beating Mayo. See, it's not a home match for Mayo at all. It's the matches in Sligo Town, and it's probably as much as a home game for Donegal as it is for Mayo, especially for the fans around South Donegal. So it's really much a neutral game. It's a big chance for Donegal to play down the marker. I think Mayo, now, see, we don't know what's coming out with the camp. Like, there's very little, like, Mayo give absolutely nothing away, and like, we don't know what the story is with Killian O'Connor in particular. He hasn't played any club football. Is he going to be able to rediscover his heights, etc., etc.? But I think Oisin Mullen coming back is a big addition to Mayo in the defence. He can take a good Donegal forward. Probably numerous people have probably said now that the players coming through in Donegal aren't maybe as good as players that are coming that have been there before. So I think Donegal, this is a tricky one. It's one of those games that we don't actually know anything about either team. Like, it's really nothing to gauge on. And I'd say Mayo might just a bit of home steel. Well, it's not a home game, I suppose, but Mayo might just have too much. I think Mayo might just edge this slightly.
Intriguing game, no doubt, though. And in the next game, Tyrone against Monaghan in Healy Park, 4:15, Aaron. So might be a few yellows and reds in that one.
Yeah, there usually is when Tyrone and Monaghan play each other. I remember in the league last year, and even in that Ulster final as well. So yeah, it's an interesting one with Tyrone. They're another hard one to call. I mean, they didn't look great at all during pre-season, but of course, obviously, the majority of their team were away on holiday. So, you know, it is interesting. Like, will they have that hangover from winning the All-Ireland last year? Like, will they maybe start the league a little bit slow? Will they take the league as serious as maybe a Kerry or a Dublin, like who maybe have points to prove? Like, Tyrone probably coming into the league maybe without that point to prove, but at the same time, plenty of competition within the squad. Like, interesting, Mark Bradley, Tiernan McCann, both opting out, like not available for Tyrone. Yeah, for Tyrone this year. Like, so yeah, Ronan O'Neill as well. So it's an interesting one with Tyrone. Like, Dara Canavan looks like a top class player, obviously son of God and all the rest. Like, and brilliant impact, I thought, coming off the bench last year against both Kerry and Mayo. Interesting to see with Cathal McShane, you know, are they going to risk him and start him in a lot of the games? I know he's fully recovered now, but he's still coming back off a big injury, and you know, you don't want him picking up another injury before the All-Ireland Championship. So it will be interesting with Tyrone, all right, to see what way they approach this year. And again, you can't really read too much into pre-season, but there was players in there like Lee Brennan and a few other lads, like big opportunity for them in pre-season that they probably didn't take. So it'll be an interesting one, like going up against Monaghan as well. Like, I have a sneaky feeling Monaghan might turn them over in this game. Like, Monaghan are just that kind of team that seem to just turn up when you least expect it. Like what Conor said, like they're so inconsistent. Like, every time they look down and beaten, they seem to come back, but then when they're in front and comfortable, they seem to throw it away. So you never kind of really know what you're going to get with Monaghan. But I'd nearly fancy them to turn Tyrone over in this game, because I just think Tyrone are going to be coming into the league maybe a little bit flat to begin with. And I think they'll probably pick up towards the end once they start getting some of their bigger players back and whatnot. But it'd be interesting to see with Conor McKenna as well. Like, another year, obviously not the Conor McKenna we have on this podcast here, but the other Conor McKenna. I'm sure people have mixed you up before, but yeah, I think another big year for him as well, because I thought he was brilliant, especially in the semi-final and final. So, like, they have all the makings to go on and win the All-Ireland again. I think it will just be I suppose, kind of, finding that desire and motivation within themselves and finding that again this year?
Don't know who is more pressure on them this year, our Connor or Connor for Tyrone. Connor, what do you think?
I don't know. I think that I haven't got my All-Ireland medal, so there might be more pressure on myself. But I think that it's a tricky one. I'm actually going to that game in Omagh on Sunday. But I think Monaghan probably will turn that game, will probably win that game as well. I'm probably on our side of thinking there as well. I think Tyrone, they've lost 5 lads from the panel from last year, set away Michael Cassidy and Mark Bradley and Hugh Pat McGeary, Ronan O'Neill as well, and Tiernan McCann. So there are 5 players, and they're not 5. I won't say, like, they're not 5 players that are just fringe players. They're 5. Some of those players in particular would have came on and made impact in games. So certainly a loss to Tyrone at those guys, But I don't know. I don't fancy Tyrone to win the All Ireland this year. Now, it could be probably famous last words, but at the moment, I'd say Derry will probably turn them over in the first round of Ulster if they do get past Fermanagh in the preliminary round. And I also think that the league, Tyrone could be under a bit of pressure to survive in the league this year. And I think they're a very good team. They have good players, but maybe just I suppose there's probably no team in comparison. Probably the most comparison team because it's maybe Cork in 2010 is probably a fair comparison in the sense Cork were coming off on the Kerry were just probably past their peak then, and that's probably similar to what Dublin are now. When Dublin were probably coming then, that's probably similar to what Kerry are now. So it's probably a relatively similar scenario in that sense, And I do think Monaghan might just do enough this weekend to win. And if Monaghan win this weekend, they'll probably have one foot towards survival. So I think Monaghan will really go for this weekend. I think they might just cause a shock.
Johnny, what about yourself? That's a huge game this weekend.
Yeah, it is. But one thing, fellas, we've seen over the years from Tyrone, you can never write them off, and they're always capable of pulling players out of absolutely nowhere. Guys you haven't heard tell of, and they just can do it. They do have the underage structure there. It's just a conveyor belt. And guys just pop in and out. I agree with the lads. I'm really looking forward to seeing Son of God. I'd like to see him get a few more starts this year and build from he was very good coming on as a sub in the second half. He came on earlier in some games. I think he's a class act. Probably needs to put on a wee bit of bulk, a wee bit more conditioning. But I think that'll come in time. He's a very impressive player. I do expect Cal McShane to be back the weekend. I do agree, with Aaron there. A couple of players, Lee Brennan's got a chance there, a few games. Doesn't look to have the cutting up in him to survive in that there. Wants it a bit too handy. Yes, Ronan O'Neill stepped away. He wasn't getting a lot of game time. Top class finisher, very, very skillful, but they just have too many options in there. I think McGeary's going to be a miss. Tiernan McCann's going to be a miss. Even though sometimes he does be in and out with injury and stuff, but he does have a lot of pace coming out of defence. Monaghan, I would know a right bit about Monaghan, obviously because involved in club football there. Monaghan will take a lot out of that win the weekend. They are very fit. They're well organised. But I'm telling you guys, I just knowing Tyrone and knowing how sneaky Tyrone can be, I would not write Tyrone off. And anybody who writes Tyrone off will do it at their peril. I do agree with the fella, with Connor in one sense. That Monaghan and Tyrone, they could find themselves in relegation territory, I think, this year. The both of them maybe even, so it's going to be a massive game. And it's a must-win game for both teams. And out of all the Division 1, I know we said about Armagh and Dublin, but if Armagh lose to Dublin, listen, it's not the end of the world. Nobody's expecting them to win up there. But I think this is potentially could be the game of the weekend for me in Division 1, and I think it's going to be a cracker. And I'll be looking forward to seeing that one. It's a must-win for both teams.
Definitely, Johnny, definitely. Well, that's the league wrapped up, and just briefly touching, lads, on the All-Ireland Club Senior Football Championship semi-finals this weekend. Obviously, Kilcoo of Down v St Finbarrs of Cork in in Portlaoise at 3 p.m. and the game will be live at TG Cahir. So, Connor, what's the verdict down?
Yeah, I'm going to go a bit off the bar here. I'm going to go with Finbars. I was at the match against Stacks in the Munster final. I think Kilcoo are good. I don't think Kilcoo are great. I think that I saw them a few times. They carried up, were very close and down. There's been a few teams close to beating them and down. They are a very, very good team, Kilcoo, and I do think that they might. But I think Finbars have a young team, a bit of energy in them. Ian Maguire is very good. Michael Shields, Alan O'Connor, a bit of experience, and Brian Hayes was excellent the last day as well. And I just think Finbars might cause a shock here this weekend. Now, Kilcoo are a very organised team. They're very hard to play against, but I just think Finbars have a real chance. I just think that the standard of football in Cork is probably better than what it is in Down, and they're being totally written off, like, really, in a lot of parts, like, and I just think that could be one where they could cause a shock this weekend, Finbars, definitely.
And Aaron, what about yourself? Kilmacud Crokes of Dublin against Roscommons Pork Pierces in Kingsmount Breckly Park at 5 p.m. on TG Cahir as well. So that's a mouth-watering game, Aaron.
Yeah, it is all right. Like, and it'll be interesting to see how Crokes obviously deal without having Paul Mannion. They obviously, they passed the first test obviously against Nice with flying colours, really, with the fact that Paul Mannion obviously wasn't available, and they really did stand up, and it was probably one of their best performances all year. Like, there's been plenty of times this year where Kilmacud Crokes have looked a bit flat in the first half of performances and probably haven't kicked into gear really until late on in the second half. It was like that against Jude's. It was similar enough against Port Arlington as well. But like, some of the other players like probably don't get spoken about enough. Like, I think a lot of people give Kilmacud Crokes a lot of praise because of Paul Mannion and all the rest, but I think we're seeing Dan O'Brien, Tom Fox, some of these other lads really stepping up. Craig Diaz has been exceptional in midfield, and he's probably, I know someone was arguing the point that it's probably too late for him to come back into the Dublin panel, but he is a brilliant footballer in around the middle of the park as well, and very experienced, all across the pitch. So, Rory O'Carroll in the fence as well. But Padraig Pearses are a weird one. Like, they've managed to find their way just about this. They've squeezed through the last two games, really. And I was impressed with them enough against Knockmore, and obviously with the Dailies in there as well. It's a really hard one to call, to be honest. Like, I'm not too sure which way to go on it, because I could see a game in which Padraig Pearses probably frustrate Kilmacud Crokes and make it a tough game and make it a hard watch and maybe squeeze their way through. But at the same time, I still think Kilmacud Crokes are a better team. So I might just go with Crokes, maybe to edge this one by a point. But at the same time, this could be one that goes to penalties and goes all the way, because it's a very hard one to call.
We'll wait and see. And to wrap up, lads, Johnny, who'll be your player to watch this weekend and the bet of the weekend?
The pair to watch this weekend. Yeah, like I said, I think that Monaghan and Tyrone game is going to be the one for me. And obviously, I definitely have to say Armagh Dublin, but that one's a make or break for me. I know the guys spoke about a few in the lower divisions, especially in Division 3, a couple of tight games. But I think with listen, lads, we have to call a spade a spade. Division 1 is what it's all about. Monaghan and Tyrone is a game of all games, I think, this weekend, and it's a must-win for both teams. Yes, we look forward to. You can nearly pick one on both days, one the Saturday, one the Sunday. But yeah, I think that's the big one. And obviously, if Armagh could get over the line, as you know, I'm not a betting man anymore, John. But for anybody having a bet, I think Derry. I go as far to say maybe Derry -5. That should pay decent. I think Down missing Kilcoo men, it's a savage ask, lads. A couple of the Johnsons brings an awful lot to the table there with Down. Yes, James and them will have them organised, but like the guy said, Slot Neal now out, good few players back in. I think they'd be far too strong, lads. I really do. I think Derry could go for a comfortable win the weekend if they get going at all. So yeah, that's for me, John.
Stuff. And Conor, what about yourself? The player to watch this weekend and the bet of the weekend?
Yeah, well, I suppose the player one is a tough one. I'm not really one for players. I prefer to watch a team. I think football is a bit of a team game always, and I don't like singling out players, I suppose. Yeah, it's a tricky one. Maybe Conor Glass, I suppose, Derry and Down, he's probably an I think I would probably more so his Glass fit. There was question marks over his fitness in the McKenna Cup, like, so I'd like some interest to see Glass if he plays how he operates against Down. I think he can have a big influence on Derry this year as a whole, to be honest with you. And I suppose just a bet, I'm going to give 3 bets here, all at 4-1 that I think that the listeners could nibble at. The first one is Finbars against Kilcoo. I think 4-1 is way too big a price. And second one is Armagh against Down, or against Dublin. I think they're 9-2 in place. I think that's a very, very generous price. And also Kerry to go unbeaten in the 7 matches of the league is 4-1 with Paddy Power. I think that's a great bet too, because their home matches are against Dublin, Tyrone and Mayo and Donegal, and the away matches is against Kildare, Armagh and Monaghan. So I think that's a way too big a price on Kerry. So those 3 for anyone who fancies a bit of a flutter, you know.
Happy days, Conor. And what about yourself, Aaron? Leave the last words to you.
Yeah, well, I suppose player to watch anyway from a Dublin point of view would definitely be Lee Gannon anyway, because he's been a player that's, like, a lot of people have been speaking about in the past couple of years. Like, I remember in that under-20 final against Galway, he was by far Dublin's best player, and I think it's a position as well, like in a wing back, in a half back, that Dublin have really been looking for really since Jack McCaffrey stepped away, and Owen Merchant's had his injury problems, Robbie McDade's had his injury problems. So I think it's a huge opportunity for a player like Lee Gannon, really to kind of on centre stage as well. Croke Park, the lights would be on, everyone would be watching. So huge opportunity for him. I suppose, yeah, bet at a weekend. I don't know, I'm not much of a betting man, to be perfectly honest. Anytime I've tried to bet in the past, it definitely hasn't worked out. But yeah, like, you know, if you were going to stick on maybe Armagh to shock the Dubs or something like that. I couldn't see it happening now, to be perfectly honest, but I'd imagine you get a good price for something like that, or maybe Kildare beating Kerry. Who knows? You know, with it being the first game, Jack O'Connor going back there, maybe Kildare might turn it on. Don't see it happening either, but sure, look, there's a reason why I don't bet anyways.
That's for sure. Like myself, neither of us is in it.
Brilliant stuff, lads. Brilliant stuff. Well, that's that wrapped up. Great to be back, and thanks a billion for joining us this week. And of course, this podcast is brought to you by orgorich.com and Atak.ie. Use the referral code JMAC podcast to get 15% off on orgorich.com and get the best skins, gloves, equipment on Atak.ie. Be attack minded. If you like what you're seeing, like and subscribe on YouTube, because the sport has been brilliant so far. Aaron, Johnny, Conor, thanks a million.
Come on, John. Cheers.
No bother at all. Cheers.
Cheers, boys.